Hello and welcome to Get Good. This video is the first one in a series I'm doing on a League of Votann character. I've been wanting to paint one of these for a fair bit now because for me, looking at the armor plating and stuff, it's really interesting having these overlaying or overlapping armor sections, and you can do some nice blending and smooth transitions on them. So I have been wanting to paint one for a while, but it's with a backlog of all kinds of things, it just took a while. So now I finally have the time to work on one. And well, first thing is to pick some colors, right? And after talking to Bruce a bit, we decided to do orange. There are really two reasons. One is I haven't painted really almost any orange. So sometimes painting a project in a color that you haven't painted or haven't painted in a while can be kind of freeing as you feel a bit more excited about it. The other thing is orange is a bit tricky when you paint it, so I would like to show at least a way to brush paint orange. You can see I'm painting here with an Artist Opus S size 1. So the brush is, I won't say big, but it's fairly big compared to what I normally paint with. And while you can paint with any brush you really want to, I usually prefer smaller brushes. But for blending purposes, I picked a bigger brush here. But I'll get back into the blending. The video will be segmented a bit, as you can see here in the beginning. I'm basically taking my first midtone and sketching in where I want light to be. You can see that I already did the left side leg, just to test out the colors, see that everything works. And because all of these colors are actually new, I got them for this project specifically. So just to see how like the scheme or the plating looks when it's taken all the way from the darkest to lightest colors. And I've picked a lighting direction that is top and a bit left. The model will be fairly brightly lit in general. So that means, of course, I'm putting shadows in, as you can see also on the leg plate, and where I'm sketching here, the orange stops and the purple starts. But as the model will be brightly lit, you will see the purples and magentas, but it won't be all over the place. So only for the very deepest shadows. As you can see, I'm sketching in those highlights, and I'm keeping them a bit left leaning. So almost the entirety of the left side are orange, and then a bit more of the purple on the other side. So first step is sketching in, and I went over it quite a lot because these oranges, well, I'm saying these oranges, but most, if not every orange, won't cover very well. It's just about the pigment. So yellows and oranges, they don't cover very well. As I go to the brighter colors, they have much more white in them, which means they naturally will be covering much better. But here in the beginning, I had to go over it quite a lot. It's not a terribly big deal. It looks a bit bad in the beginning because you're building up layers, which means you can see some of the purple shining through, and it gets a bit muddy because you're kind of skipping a stage, being the magenta. So the transition looks a bit muddy, and that doesn't matter too much because we are painting over it with magenta anyways. So it's just for you to know that you might have to go over it a fair bit to build up the layers, because you want it to be opaque right where your highlight areas come. So going through the colors as I'm painting in the magenta here in the transition from orange to the purple or violet. The colors I have on the palette, the top right one, the darkest one, is these are all AK. It's a violet red, and that's the entirety of the base coat you see. I have, you can't see it on the palette, but I have given all of it a wash in the Citadel shade Druchii Violet. I kept it fairly thin, so like from the pot, and then added a bit of water to it, just for it to flow into the recesses. So I got the recesses to be very, very dark, to have like an automatic like dark lining. Then underneath the violet red, I have laser magenta. Laser magenta is a very, very vibrant magenta, and I'm not using it pure as it is from the bottle, but I use it to mix. You can see the bottle right under it is laser magenta, and the middle top one, which is burnt orange. So I mixed those two and got that. It's kind of a dark orangey magenta, I guess. That is the right side bottom bottle. It's a really nice transition color, going from the violet into orange. Then middle top is burnt orange, which was the one I started sketching with. And it's a bit of a desaturated orange. It has a bit of red and a bit of white in it too. So it is almost like a slight salmon-y color actually, but it's dark enough for me to use it as basically the first mid-tone. Underneath that one, I have deep orange. Deep orange is a very vibrant, I'd say almost like a pure pigmented orange. It might have a bit of white in it too, but it's pretty close to being pure pigmented. Very, very vibrant. Then I have in the left side on the top is light orange, And underneath that one is a pastel peach. The light orange is a bit peachy too, but not too much. And the pastel peach is obviously, it's very, very bright. And I only use it ever so slightly, because I don't want the entirety of the armor to look like bright pastel peach. I want the orange to show, but I still want the very bright, vibrant highlights. So those are the colors of the armor scheme, and I plan on combining it with having helmet and boots and details like that be almost black, so a very, very dark purple with kind of a bit of a desaturated grayish highlights. So I keep the purple kind of theme going without it being, well, purple. So mainly for shadows. So talking a bit about why I've chosen these exact colors. So one thing is, as I said, I hadn't painted with those before, and I wanted to. But the other reason is, if you look at a color wheel, you can go from violet through magenta all the way to oranges, and then it goes from orange further to your yellows with almost like peachy colors between it. So it is color-wise a straight progression, and each of those are a slightly bit brighter, so you can go up through value. So I'm going through like a color transition and a value transition. So the purples and magentas look really nice and harmonious in the shadows, and they bring interest. So instead of doing more of reddish or brownish even tones, I get more vibrancy with picking purples and magentas. And that's why I want to keep purple as something showing even in the well, quote unquote black elements that are going on later on. So back to the brush. As I said, it was I picked out a bit of a bigger brush as compared to what I usually do. And I am also painting this one a bit differently. Normally when I paint, it's kind of what you see here, where I'm doing tiny dots and tiny stipples and mixing quite a bit back and forth. So it's normal for me to have maybe, let's say, six base colors that I've taken from the pots or droppers or whatever, but I'll do like a mid 50-50 mix almost between all of them. And I do that because that really helps me with feathering out a transition. Because I don't go very, like, yeah, I do mix in like 50-50 water to paint, but I rarely glaze, which means when you then build your transition in layers, you can see that layer line from one layer to the next one. And generally you don't want that. So to avoid it, I I do more mixes, right? So let's say we had the colors you see on the palette right here. Normally I would do like a mix between the violet and the laser magenta and burnt orange mix. Then I would have the burnt orange and the deep orange. Maybe they're close enough, but I would at least have one between deep orange and light orange, and possibly also one between light orange and pastel peach. So I would be doing something like 3 to 5 50-50 mixes, more than what you see here. But I don't with these oranges, and the reason for that is they are pretty translucent to begin with. So when I normally paint, when I take the brush to the model, it leaves a mark. It will be a bit softer when when I have it more added more water, a bit more water, or if you just like put less pressure on the brush, so it makes a softer mark, or even the smaller the mark, the less noticeable it is, of course. So normally I would be doing even smaller marks, kind of like I'm doing here, where I'm dotting and stippling a bit and scratching a bit over the transitions and building up. But because these colors don't really cover very well, it would really take forever if I did my normal go-to. And while you could do it that way, nothing wrong with it. It's just I can't really show that in a video, because nothing would be happening for forever. So even here, going a bit back and forth. Now I'm at I had the burnt orange and then deep orange on top, and you don't see that much of a change, because one thing is the light. So I shine a lot of light on the model, because that lets me see the transitions the most. I'm painting with 2 times magnification, so I can really see where one layer is not really smoothed out enough, if that's the case. And shining a lot of light from the desk lamp onto it also enhances any flaws. So you didn't see like a huge jump from having the burnt orange sketched in layer that was then blended out with the magenta into the violet, and then when I started putting deep orange on top, I will say those colors are fairly close. Whereas the burnt orange, it is a bit more burned in the sense that it has a bit of red in it, but it's not massively so. And that means the shift is kind of subtle enough so that it is not that easy to get on camera. It is there, definitely so. You will see it much more in hand. Here you can see more of a change, because now I'm up to putting on that light orange, and we go into kind of a more pastel look, almost like a salmon-y color. And you can see the vibrancy really coming through now as I put that on. I have a fair amount of the light orange showing, but especially here. But as I said, because of those the properties of the orange paints, I need to be doing a bit bigger strokes generally because I'm working with the translucency. That means the finished result is quite smooth as you're going over, let's say maybe 7 or even 8 times with your thinned oranges. They will be quite smooth. So at the point we're at right now, you can see a transition between, there's also almost like a hard cut between the light orange and the deep orange opaque layer, as I've kind of sketched it in. It's quite important that you keep your brush strokes going in the direction of the light. That means when I'm blending from the deep orange and I'm blending into the light orange, I drag towards that middle highlight. Because of the translucency of these paints, I start, you can see here how I start sketching in. Okay, so this is how I want the light orange to be. This is roughly the size of that highlight. As I build it on that top, I don't even know if it's a light thingy or whatever it is. And as the light runs down the armor panel on the chest and stomach, I've sketched it in so that it's not fully smooth at all, but you can kind of tell if if you went too bright, because if you put too much of that pastel, like the light orange, not the peach, but well, also the peach, but the light orange on, it will eat into the deep orange and burnt orange, of course, and it will kind of turn it much more like salmon peachy looking and not as orange. So you need to be mindful that if you make these highlights too big, it will look, well, less orange. So that's why I start sketching them in to get to a point where, okay, I think this is the size I'm happy with for whatever volume I'm building. And when I'm happy with that, I will extend it a tiny bit. And the reason is, when I've then extended it a bit, I can go back to deep orange and fade out that transition between light orange and deep orange. It's not that I don't do that normally. I just do it much more in a like a fluid motion, I guess, or a fluid blending of a transition, because normally I don't have to go. Well, sometimes I do a bit, but only to like feather out like a tiny portion of a transition or something that looks a bit rough. But because of these oranges being quite translucent, you can almost, even when they are maybe not 50-50 water to paint, but the burnt orange and deep orange definitely at, I'd say, 2-to-1 parts water to paint. They are in the territory of what I'd call a fat glaze. A fat glaze is something that is heavier than a filter. So if you put it on, it will definitely stain. You need to drag it in the direction of the light very deliberately. but it can smooth out a transition fairly easily. And going over it once or maybe even twice, and it should be pretty smooth. I'll say this project is not going to be a competition piece or anything. So while I do enjoy making smooth transitions and like neat looking models, it's not something that I will keep on going over forever until it looks quote unquote perfect. I'll spend some time on it, but more within reason than you would on something that goes into competition. I'm saying that, but with everything I paint, I might end up enjoying it so much that, well, I'll consider it for something, but I'll go back then and look for if I need to fix a tiny mistake here or there or whatever. So I do take it fairly far, but I don't agonize over every tiny detail and every transition. Especially as I get further into the model. Obviously, if you spend more time right where you have your main viewing angle and preferably your focal point or focal points, you get a lot of mileage from that alone, because it's where people are looking the most anyways. If they pick up your model and look at it, this is obviously not tabletop. Well, it could be, but I'd say if you're painting like this for an army, you'd better have a lot of time to invest into it. But you could do it for something like a kill team or something. So it doesn't have to be for display, but I'd say it's more a display level of painting. There you could see I went over it with a bit thinner paint, just to kind of, it's not, well, the definitions of glazing and layering and stuff like that is tricky on its own. But I would say it's not a full glaze at all. But it's close enough to being it. You can see how the edge of that puddle, I added more water to it, and as I drag it over, it doesn't stain a lot at all, and that is something to be mindful of. Let's say you wanted to do something similar to what I'm doing here, but you wanted to do it for green, for example. So you want to take it like a green with a purple base, and then just be mindful that green, generally at least, behaves differently than oranges do. So that's why I'm saying when thinning something, I'm generally at around 50-50 water to paint, but it really depends on the paint. It's you basically have to know every paint in your collection, how it behaves, and that's why I did the leg first, so that I could kind of gauge how they behaved, how I had to work them, because I have some paints also where I know I need to add a bit of flow improver for it to handle better, because handling of paint is a real thing. They don't handle the same at all. The paints I normally use are AK and Citadel and Vallejo. Those are the ones I tend to use. I do have paints from scale 75. I do have some Reaper paints. I have Chimeras, and I have Army Painter Fanatics. And while all of them are good paints, they definitely don't handle the same. In the sense that some of them are a bit thicker, some of them have more or less coverage, some of them have different types of mediums in them, and you kind of need to figure out on your own how a paint handles, how you like to use them, and generally people then find out what do they gravitate towards because of their preferred style of painting, or even also the kind of the canvas that they choose. I'd say personally I'm not too into, for example, scale 75, but they might be better if I was painting more in 75mm or bust size. So picking the right brand or even the right color within those brands. For example, I really love the reds from Citadel. I think they handle it well, and they look really good. Not every brand has the same like a red from Reaper and a red from Vallejo and a red from scale 75. They don't look the same and they don't handle the same. So I kind of pick and choose, I guess, between the brands and know by now, okay, I have my preferred, like almost like a must-have list of paints. Here you can see I did one of my half mixes. It is incredibly normal for me to do, and I recommend everybody doing it. I just took a bit of deep orange and light orange and did a 50-50 mix. And when I'm saying 50-50 mix, be mindful that I'm not saying 1 drop of one to 1 drop of the other necessarily. Sometimes that works out, but it might be the case that because the pigments within paints don't have the same potency. So, for example, the magenta pigment within that laser magenta is much stronger than the pigment within the burnt orange. So when I say 50-50, you'd like something to be about halfway between your two colors, but that means sometimes you have to add like 60% of one and 40 of the other, or like 70-30 even. And it's not that it has to be an exact science at all. It shouldn't matter really. It's actually more important that you look at the color, and if you think it's too light or too dark, you just add a bit of either light or dark color to it. So it's just to be mindful when I'm saying a 50-50 mix. It means roughly 50-50, and it means much more something that is halfway between. Same goes for when I say 50-50 water to paint. It's not exactly that. It could be more, it could be less. I'm painting with these specific colors today, but let's say you have some oranges you already own, and you want to try doing what I'm doing here. You definitely don't need to go out and get exactly these colors. So you could easily use your own, but they might be have like the pigment within might be more or less potent, which means you might want to thin it down more or less. It's quite important for me to put these things into words, because I don't believe that a recipe is the end all be all, because let's say I have a recipe here, or one of my other recipes. It is something for you to get inspired by, or like pick colors that are somewhat similar, right? Because I'm guessing you would strive for a look that is maybe not exactly the same, but somewhere around what I'm looking at here. And let's say you had the exact same colors I have here. It would be kind of a coincidence if you got to be at an endpoint that is exactly where I'm at. Because even if we had the exact same colors, we wouldn't be applying them exactly the same way, and we wouldn't be applying them in exactly the same ratios. And it matters quite a lot that when you're painting something over dark, for example, when I put on the first layer of that burnt orange over the base coat, I go to opaque. Let's say you didn't go entirely opaque. That means a bit of that base color is showing through, and then you put your next layer on, and you can still have a tiny bit of it showing through. And I might go a bit more opaque or a bit less opaque with the next layers. That means my color is kind of tinted by whatever layer is before, and yours might be less tinted, which ends up with it looking a bit different. Same goes for exact mixes, and same goes for exact ratios. You can see there, it's fairly thin, and not only is it thin, it doesn't put a lot of color. It's the pigments aren't that strong. So thinking you can pick up a recipe, put it on a model, and that your model will look exactly the same, well, that depends. Are we doing the same technique of blending? Are we making the same kind of marks? Are we painting to the same degree of neatness? Are we using the opacity of paints or transparency of paints exactly the same way? Do we even have the same colors? Stuff like that. So I think getting inspired by a recipe is perfect. Thinking that the recipe will yield the exact same result, it won't. Let's say I wanted to bake a cake, and I find a recipe and a tutorial making that cake. Even though they are professionals, I'm thinking, well, I can get fairly close at least. I try and bake the cake. You follow the recipe, possibly following the video. My cake doesn't look the same, and I'm pretty sure it won't taste exactly the same either. It might not be exactly as spongy or as like the ratio of spices might be a bit different, or using a different brand even of whatever spice or whatever topping or whatever it is. So you won't have the same result, and thinking you will get the same result with painting is a bit wrong, because you won't. So take great inspiration, but don't stress over exact colors and exact mixes. Look at what you're painting, and if you're not entirely happy with it, try and put in more like of the darker colors or the lighter colors, or tweak it a bit until you're happy with how it looks. Because I guarantee you that the result won't be exactly the same as what I have here. So this is the end of this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you in the next one.